All right, welcome back to the George Poulos podcast. In this episode, I'm going to expand on part one of my thoughts on love and dating. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I definitely encourage you to do so. I'm going to be expanding on an idea I shared about unconditional love because I posted a short clip of it on TikTok and it went absolutely viral, currently sitting at 600,000 views. And obviously that clip didn't have all of the context of the full episode, so there was bound to be some more misunderstanding. But being that that clip reached such a widespread public audience, I got a good idea of where people were misunderstanding the message and maybe where some people are stuck. So a very common response, and actually before I say this, let me play the clip that I posted to TikTok as is. This is the clip that went viral right here. Do you want to love someone conditionally or unconditionally? And vice versa. Do you want to be loved conditionally or loved unconditionally? And here's a hard pill to swallow. In order to love someone unconditionally, you must love them even if they no longer love you. Because if you only love someone because they love you in this moment, that's conditional love. There's a condition on that love. It's an agreement. It's not a conscious love. It's an agreement. It's a contract. True love is free love. You must be okay with the other person going, and they must be okay with you going, or else it's going to get clingy, right? And there's nothing wrong with having these tendencies to cling. In the right relationships, you can verbalize and work through these things, right? But if that's the reality, if you're clinging and you really need them to stay, it's an agreement. It's not true love. So that was the clip that went viral. And the most common response that I got kind of pushing against this idea of unconditional love was this question of, are you supposed to love somebody unconditionally even if they disrespect you? And I'll actually read one of the comments that I got word for word. So the comment reads, question, to love unconditionally, whether it be a friend, family, or lover, do you have to accept and be okay that they don't respect you? So my short answer is yes, but it requires some elaboration. I think people are conflating my idea of unconditional love with the idea of remaining in a relationship. So in my view, loving yourself is the number one priority that we should all have. So that is going to come with some heavy boundary setting. So we should not allow anyone to step all over us, to harm us, to disrespect us. Boundary setting is a fundamental way in which we can love ourselves. And it's also a fundamental way in which we can love and accept others. So in my view, one of the most important things that we can do to truly love someone is to truly, fully accept where they are and fully accept who they are in this moment, right? But that does not mean that we must stay in a relationship with them. This is the key difference. I think there's a lot of, which I addressed in the previous episode, there's a lot of attaching to the relationship, to how long you want the relationship to last. Take your given partner, whoever you're thinking of, there's an attachment to wanting to be with them, right? Even if they start to disrespect you potentially. But our responsibility is to love ourselves. And if we really love another person, we accept them. But accepting them doesn't mean we stay with them. So the way I reconcile this is by the fact that in my mind, love and relationships are different forces. A relationship is a physical togetherness in this plane of reality, but love is the underlying fabric, right? And in my view, when you truly love someone, you accept them in totality for who they are. So if someone is disrespecting you, being hurtful to you, not being a great partner, you accept that that's who they are by setting boundaries, right? Even if that boundary means breaking up with them, that's actually the ultimate act of accepting who someone is and allowing them to be who they are, right? If you're attached to the idea of being in a relationship with them, you're going to try to control them into changing so that they can be a good partner for you, right? So I disagree with all of these subtle games of controlling another person. If another person is disrespecting us, we need to set boundaries, but those boundaries are in effect an act of accepting who they are. So we're allowing them to be who they are. If they're disrespecting you, you're not going to change them if they're not ready to change. You're just a placeholder for them to project their disrespect. For whatever they're going through, they're projecting it onto you. They will project it onto whoever, It's not about you. They are where they are, and it's not your job to control them. This is kind of the underlying philosophy, right? In true love, we accept the other person, but that doesn't mean we have to relate to them, right? If our responsibility is to love ourselves, to fill our cup, if someone is dragging us down and we're trying to reluctantly drag us on the path, causing pain to both of us, it's not the way, We need to let people be. So I do think unconditional love is real, and it exists by allowing someone to be totally who they are, even if that means they're a disrespectful person. And that doesn't mean take the disrespect, It actually definitely means to set boundaries, to cut them off, let them be who they are, let them go on their journey. It doesn't involve you anymore, right? We're all on a journey home, as Ram Dass says, and maybe you started that relationship and you guys were walking the path together, and maybe you're still going forwards towards the light and they've gone astray, maybe even turned backwards. If you're clinging to the idea of a relationship, if you think that loving someone means you have to be in a relationship with them, then they're going to drag you down with them. And you're going to try to drag them up, and it's a whole lot of forcing. It's kind of a violent energy. It's not an allowing. I believe we need to allow people to be. And this is why in the first episode on love and dating, I'm very passionate about this idea of letting people be so much so that if the paths drift, you just let them drift. Because when you start clinging, that's when it starts to get messy in a way that it's not supposed to be, right? So my message of unconditional love is a message of radical acceptance, not in that you're going to let somebody sit there and disrespect you. You love them by allowing them to be. You love them by respecting yourself, by working on yourself, by setting boundaries to cut that person off if necessary. I shared this sentiment in the last episode too. But breaking up with somebody is the ultimate boundary. And by setting the ultimate boundary, it's the ultimate act of allowing. You're actually sending a message when you set the ultimate boundary. You're sending a message that I accept you. I see where you are on your path. I'm not going to try to control you. This is who you are. I see you. In my view, that is unconditional love. It's when you're clinging to the idea of a relationship that you might start letting someone disrespect you. That's one form of allowing someone to be who they are. But when you love yourself, you're not going to tolerate that. And when you're not attached to a relationship in order to fill you, because you're already whole, there's no need to tolerate that. So you still love this person, but you set boundaries. And a resource I shared in the last episode was a book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. If you're a people pleaser, everything I share on this podcast comes from my experience, which is that of a former people pleaser. I used to feel like I needed to prioritize the other person's needs to make them comfortable in order to receive love. Now I see that when I am in a place of wholeness, I can set boundaries because I don't need anybody. So it's impossible to let anybody disrespect me. I can accept if someone is at a place in their life where they are disrespecting others, but I'm not going to allow it to be me, right? Because I'm whole, because I love myself. So we need to cultivate self-love. We need to let go of our grasp onto specific relationships and specific ideas of the future. If a relationship is serving us here and now, we can allow it to flower, to unfold. It's very beautiful when it's a free choice between free humans and we allow the relationship to flower. It's very beautiful. But when it's not serving you here and now, it should just drift. That's nature. Nature is change. So that's my clarification on that. It's that love and relationship or commitment are on two different planes. And love can exist between two people, even if the ultimate boundary of a breakup has been set, right? That's unconditional love. Do you see what I'm saying? We don't love controlling someone is not an act of true love. We would only need to control someone who is disrespecting us if we are coming from a place of lack, if we feel like we need that person, right? That's also why I emphasized that love should not be born out of a place of need. It should be born out of a place of already inner wholeness. That's when a relationship forms naturally and starts to be this overflow of beauty and love, right? That's kind of my response to that question, or that general sentiment that I was getting a lot on that TikTok of mine. And I'm just going to read, because a lot of the times when I find these questions, I'll just dump down my notes onto the notes app. So I'm just going to read this too. We don't love someone by controlling them. We need to let them be who they are. When someone doesn't respect you, we do not try to control them into respecting us. Our love is acceptance, not control. We love them. But that does not mean we have to allow them to relate with us. Love transcends space and time. We are already whole. We do not need someone else to respect us. If they are disrespecting us, they do not respect themselves. It's not our job to save them. And here's a patron question. Again, patrons get top priority. I try to answer all or most patron questions on the podcast. Patreon.com/George Poulos to join that community. So here's a related question. Dear George, I'm at a crossroads in my life and was just looking for another person's opinion. There's an ex who in the past treated me really bad. Recently we've started talking again, and she said she has changed, although I'm very skeptical due to her past. I am wondering if calculating brain telling me not to is the right decision, or if it is blocking what I want to do to protect myself. Any advice on the topic or how to resolve the topic myself would be much appreciated. Okay, first of all, it's interesting, right? How the patron response, it was really similar to the response I was getting on TikTok. It's like, I think this podcast is becoming a collective inquiry, which is pretty cool. And I'm just sitting here trying to be honest. There's a lot going on here, right? With an ex who treated you badly in the past, and they're saying they've changed, maybe trying to get you back. First of all, it's very important. You want to be in a place where you do not need that person, because if you're in a place where you do not need that person, then you can actually see what's going on, right? You're going to know in your intuitive heart if they've changed or not. And people can change. Change is the only constant. But people change at their own pace. You don't know what position your ex is in. It doesn't really matter what they say. That's something that you're going to feel in your own heart. But if you are in a place where you need them, where you're in a place of scarcity, where you're desperate for them, you're not going to be able to see clearly whether they have changed, who they are right now in this moment. The clinginess might cause you to overlook what is. So if your ex has not changed and there's a sense of clinginess where you want to get back with that person to feel whole again, you're not going to be able to see clearly. So I think the most important thing to do in your position is cultivate a sense of wholeness from within, because you want to be so solid in yourself. You want to love yourself so much that you can sit down for a coffee with your ex and stay centered the whole time, right? You want to be able to sit down, look them in the face over a coffee, and not get pulled out of your center, right? You can get pulled out of your center if you're on shaky ground, if you are desperate for someone else to love you. But if you love yourself completely and you're on two strong feet, you're going to sit there for coffee and you're going to see right through whatever they're saying, not necessarily in a bad way, but you're going to be able to feel, you're going to be able to feel the truth coming from them. Their words are not going to matter so much. It's going to be this intuitive sense. But you need to be solid within yourself so that you can see and feel it clearly, and so that you don't rush into anything, so that you don't, right? Remember, all my perspectives on this podcast are coming from former people pleaser. I used to think I needed to make everybody happy in order to get love. If you love yourself truly and you're on solid ground, you're not going to get manipulated into giving someone what they need, right? There is it's like love everybody, yes, but like also be aware that people are trying to control you. A lot of people are trying to control you. This is very common. I talked about this in my manic summer of dating that I described in the last episode. I noticed a lot of people had an agenda for me. I'm very, very sensitive now, post spiritual awakening, to when people want to control me for their own comfort. When you love yourself so much, it's impossible to be manipulated. Impossible, because they don't have anything that you need. There's no leverage for you to be manipulated because you're perfect, right? So that's kind of my advice. Cultivate wholeness within. Meditate. Make sure you're good on your own. Make sure your life is your love affair. Make sure make sure you are love. Make sure you are loving. Then meet with this person when you know that you are solid within yourself and you don't need them. And then see what unfolds. See what your intuitive heart tells you. I think your caution is perfectly valid, because people capable of lying, saying that they've changed so that they can again have you under their control? Yes, it's possible. So your caution is valid, right? Trust the intuitive heart. Make sure you have a wholeness within. That's my response there. Thank you for the question to that patron. Right, so I hope that message came through. Love is not the same as relationship. Love is not the same as commitment. We want to relate from a place of pure freedom. Pure freedom. Right? If someone's not meeting our needs, it doesn't mean we don't love them. Okay, let me put it this way. If someone is not meeting our needs, or worse, if somebody is disrespecting us or even harming us, it doesn't mean we don't love them. And our job is not to control them into respecting us, nor is it to control them into meeting our needs. Our job is always to do our own work. And in that particular case, our work would be to set boundaries to remove that person. But in that setting boundaries process, we are in fact accepting them. We're letting go of our desire to change them to serve our own benefit, right? Do you see how that's love? That's love, but love is not the same as commitment, and it's not the same as relationship. Relationship and love coexist, or I'll put it this way. Ideally, ideally, and when I say ideally, I mean, how do I phrase this? Love and relationship, love and commitment should only coexist when it is a totally free choice between two individuals, right? That's enlightened love. That's awakened love. That's conscious love. When two totally free individuals gravitate towards each other by the forces of love, by the forces of nature, and choose actively to be together. Not based on contract, not based on what was said in the past, not because they've been together for X amount of years and therefore society requires that we stay together in order to be successful. None of that. It's just an active choice in each moment. Let's be together. That's the space of true enlightened love. And when one person stops meeting the needs of another, when paths diverge, it's important not to control, because that's how you're going to force a relationship that's not meant to be. That's the message, and I hope it came through. Before I move on, let me just acknowledge that none of what I'm saying lines up with how society taught us to view these things, right? Society taught us that the right partner needs to show us X, Y, and Z, and that's the right partner, and that's the person we're going to be with forever. What I believe in is a radically different approach where we don't impose expectations nor control on another person. We simply let them be who they are. We allow nature to unfold. We love here and now in the present, and we don't cling on to any ideas of the future. It's a radical take, and my experience has brought me here to believe in this way of loving because I think it's the truth. I think the way society has taught us leads to misery, because it leads more often than not to two people controlling one another, two people suffocating one another. With that all said, right, this is my view. It's acknowledged that it is a radical view, and you can take it or leave it. That's generally the philosophy of this podcast. Okay, I had more to say for this episode. I was going to go into a whole thing about privilege, which was another question that I got asked on Patreon. But as I've shifted the podcast public, it just feels like this talk came to a natural conclusion, and it's like starting another one kind of feels like it should go in the next episode so that things can stay nice and neat and searchable. And I'm still going to flow into that next conversational topic right now, but I think I am going to break it up into a different episode. So that was it for this episode. I can go on and on and on and on about love and dating. Like I said in the last episode, it has been one of my primary pursuits of or ways in which I've learned about myself and learned about the world is love and dating. So I have a lot to say. If you have any questions or any specific experiences you'd like my take on, I will tell you the raw truth. That's kind of my style. So if you want to hear it like it is, please leave your questions. I posted this on Instagram stories today, but I like how I said it. I am considering this podcast to be an earnest journey of truth, an attempt to cut through the clouds of conditioning and to see the way things are. So if you want to join me in that process, please participate by asking your questions and sharing your thoughts. That's it for this episode. I will see you probably next week, or maybe sooner. I don't know. Catch you next time. Namaste.